So let's start into this webinar, and I welcome you all wherever you are. So we've got people from Brazil, we've got people from Mexico, we've got people from the US, and all over Europe, which I think is great to see because that means we are getting international attention with this kind of webinar. My name is Stefan Schwarzischer. I'm the CEO of PharmaLedger, or Executive Director of PharmaLedger. We are an association. We are a non-profit organization based in Basel. And for the one who don't know PharmaLedger yet, just a few words on PharmaLedger itself. PharmaLedger is a digital solution development hub for the pharmaceutical industry. We bring together pharma companies, technology providers, and patient organizations to build open, trusted, and scalable digital infrastructure that support the future of healthcare. I think that's a major purpose of PharmaLedger. That means we are the custodian of an infrastructure for our pharma members. Over the past years, we developed solutions like electronic leaflets, also known as EPI, or products like inventory management, called Invis, for the industry, and we also built the blockchain solution around it. So now, why is this whole webinar and exchanging ideas and best practices, why is it important to PharmaLedger and the community? And why we actually need to speed up exchanging ideas. I think there are a few topics to mention after, let's say, we passed COVID the recent years. I think it showed that inventory visibility and an agile distribution is important to the industry more than ever. Online pharmacies are growing rapidly in all kinds of countries, which on the one hand is a good move, on the other hand, it is a threat to counterfeit medicines. And then we are all experiencing cost pressure across global supply chains. And that has started, I think, roughly 12 months ago. But also now we are seeing the increased pressure by some of the new regulations that are coming from the US. And therefore, I think we all need to speed up in making our homework. And PharmaLedger is trying to provide a platform where you can share best practice, and that's what we are doing here today with two of our speakers. We will continue to do so in the future. So this is just the beginning of a series of webinars where we share best practice, hopefully not in an academic way, but in a very practical, profound way, where then you hopefully have got some takeaways at the final end. And of course, you can also engage today's speaker after the session or in private later on to share your experience and to get their insights as well. This whole webinar is not limited to PharmaLedger members, but it's an open webinar to the whole pharma industry, just by purpose. Of course, as I said earlier on, we would like to bring the best practice to the table, and this is what we are doing right now. Before we actually start with the two speakers we have today, let me address some housekeeping before we begin. So all participants are muted during the whole session. That makes it easier for the two speakers to run through their presentations. Please post your questions and comments. There's a chat box. And sorry, my camera is continuously breaking down. So there is a room for your questions and comments, which you can put into the chat. The team will gather all these questions during the course of that webinar. And then we will have a Q&A session at the end of the two presentations. So we will not answer any questions during the presentations, but just after it. And for just to get to use, as not everybody is used to actually to the Zoom environment. I think a lot of people are more used to Teams. On the right-hand corner, top corner of your screen, you will see something like a view button where you can actually adjust the view in whether you want to see the presentation of the webinar in full mode, or you want to see the faces on the top, or you want to see the faces on the right. Just click on it if you want to enhance the presentation to the full screen, then just leave the faces out. I think you know us anyway. So having said that, I would like now to welcome the two guest speakers of today. The first one is Ali Badei from Gerresheimer, and he is the head of digital supply chain solutions. And then we've got Dr. Nadine Lampka. She's from Schreiner MediPharm. Sorry for pronouncing the German name in an English manner. And she is a senior product manager for pharma security. Both speakers are well known to PharmaLedger for quite a long time, and we've got a quite long relationship. Ali is based in Olten here in Switzerland, and Nadine is based in Munich in Germany. They both work internationally, and even so, we have prepared a small slide on Gerresheimer and on Schreiner, which you probably could read while I speak. I think most of you know them as one of your preferred vendors, especially the pharma companies know them quite well. So they are quite experts on their field, not only the companies, but also the individuals which are coming to stage now. And in order to give Ali and Nadine more time to speak, and then probably also have more time on the Q&A session, I would like to close my opening remarks now. Welcome you all again. It's great to have you all here. The Novartis, Takeda, GSK, MSD, Merck, you are all here, so that's really great to see that. By having said that, Ali, great for your time. Thank you very much for participating. And the only thing I need to do now, and welcome you to the stage, is stop sharing my presentation. And stop sharing my presentation. And then you can start sharing your presentation, and then I mute myself.
Thank you very much, Stefan. I guess you can see my screen as well as everybody can hear me.
Yes.
Perfect. So thank you very much again for allowing me to join this webinar, and welcome for the rest of the audience. In this very short session, Swiss timing 23 minutes, I would like to bring you how a combination of digital technologies such as digital twin concept or like blockchain in the primary packaging environment can be used as a practical use case, and most importantly, creating value for the pharma. So let's start. Starting with the overview of actually what Gerresheimer is doing. That's not the point here. is that in today's regulated healthcare landscape, knowing where the product is, for example, is millions of vaccines now in Africa where they should be used, or how much are actually sold where they actually needed, as we saw them in the Corona time, is not a luxury, it's basically a necessity. What we would like to do is to anchor digital twin to tangible physical objects, as you see here, to our products such as vials, syringes, cartridges, or even devices. And with that, helping pharmaceutical companies to create a seamless bridge between the physical world and its digital counterpart. So in this session, I would like to give you a physical and a pharmaceutical, how physical pharmaceutical packaging can actually be a gateway to this digital ecosystem, enabling what? Traceability from end-to-end point of view, improving safety, streamlining operations, or improving quality. But most important one is to create insight across the product life cycle. So let's go on. So let's take a moment to walk through this wheel that you see in this slide. It shows basically the journey of a medicine like cancer therapy medication from the very physical object that's been created, for example, a prefillable syringe, until it reaches the patient. From that moment that is created, it passes through many steps in manufacturing, labeling, packaging, transport, lots of wholesale in between until it reaches the hospitals, clinics, and until it reaches the patients. At each step, actually, data is generated. And this is where the concept of the digital twin becomes very powerful. What is it actually? It's basically a digital replica or a copy of this physical product. The digital twin actually collects this information throughout the journey, like where the product was made, when it was made for each single step of the process, which temperature it was impacting the manufacturing, and so on. And where is the data coming from? Many different systems. You see it in the slides, for example, below enterprise, resource planning tools, manufacturing, engineering systems, automated visual inspection, quality controls, all create lots of data through all the steps. Imagine you can collect them, but not only that, defects. You have FDA databases in which data is collected for each type of defect. So bring them all together, and with all this data, we will create a smart tool with this digital twin concept to understand and improve what is going on. And why is that useful? That's what we call actually use cases, at least in the IT or software world. So with digital twin, you could actually detect issues, first of all, early. You could simulate all these what-if scenarios before even making the changes to your product or your production line. But it's not only that, you could also, while you're monitoring, you could find lots of things. You could do lots of correlation analytics to find out what went wrong and help the root cause analysis to be much faster. Think about, for example, when a batch in production with 50,000 very high value cancer therapy medication fails and you don't know why. Actually, within minutes, if you have this data available, you could actually create the digital twin and find out the root cause. Why was that used in the past? Of course, it was, I would say, 5, 6, 7 years ago. Collecting so much data was expensive. Computing resources were expensive. They were concerned about security, but this has changed. And that's why it's time now to jump into this train. And now things are affordable. You could scale them and you could also easily use them. So most importantly, I would say digital twin concept actually creates lots of transparency for the pharmaceutical world, where many teams from different areas, they work together. They do, again, whether we just mentioned before, is labeling, as a packaging, putting them to cold chain, everything. They have to work together to make the supply chain, which is very complicated or complex work but through this reliable information, we could improve that. In short, again, digital twin help us to monitor, simulate, improve, even before problem happens, but also when the problem happens, this scattered data from all the stakeholders can help us to improve. Is sharing data normal? No, it was not, at least up to now. It needs right processes, governance, but also clear goals and right safeguards in place. But this value, we cannot deny it anymore. So let's mention a practical use case. So we zoomed into few use cases within the manufacturing of basically pharma manufacturing, which is filling and closing. So you get the syringes and you start filling them through many steps, again, different processes with the medication, with lots of ingredients coming from different places. So let's start having a look at that, why we would need this digital twin, what is the basically benefit, what kind of use cases we have. So first of all, is like how we can actually improve quality and reduce waste, at the same time also be compliant to the regulation. So one of the cases for boost quality and more compliance is improved batch segregation. In pharma manufacturing, there is no room left for risk. For example, imagine you're filling this cancer therapy medication. There are personnel coming into isolator in your factories in the manufacturing with contaminated gloves. Half a day after they find out it was like that, but what happens is that one whole batch of 50,000 basically syringes has to be discarded, has to be thrown away. If you have this traceability, you could find out the 10 minutes in which these 5,000 syringes were impacted and only get rid of those ones. It's not only the cost, but also the time you use to stop batches, building inventory, or basically, being late into the market. I mentioned before fast root cause analysis, again, tracking down the source of a quality issue, whether that problem comes from the market or it just happens within the manufacturing. According to McKinsey reports, the effectiveness of manufacturing in pharma is about 30 to 70%. So quite low comparing to others because there is no risk to be taken. There are also high level of waste, as mentioned, because if there's a particle being found in one syringe and basically liquid, it has to be thrown away. But most of the time, we don't know the root causes, and that could cost us a lot. If you have the data and we could make very advanced correlation analytics with all this data using machine learning, we could find those much, much faster and also improve the level of quality or reducing waste. The other part is about creating, for example, reports. Let's imagine number one is coming into a production line. The last medication will go out. Everything is done basically manually with lots of personnel. And if you could do it all digitally, because you could trace at every unit level, you could reduce the amount of effort, but also duration of the work very, very fast. And with that, you build trust internally and externally, and you're much more closer to the goals of compliance. Money, well, of course, every company in this call are looking for how they can improve the P&L. We made an analysis about 1,000 medication. We took a couple of them and made some assumption. In this case, of one cancer therapy medication costing about 1,500 in the market. There are 60 million doses being produced in 300 batches per year. We assumed cost of goods sold are about 10%, so $150. And we imagine that even 0.5% of the batches can be saved if you have this traceability for the contaminated batches which are discarded, or even add 1% less waste for this manufacturing production lines, because we know the root cause analysis very fast and we could improve constantly. Even those two factors, if you put them together in numbers and make the math, you end up about $40 million per year improvement in cost, which then can be used for creating better medication. So that was more the financial part. So now let's see, how did we actually do it? A simplified overview about how, for example, blockchain is used or digital twin is used. At the heart of this concept, as you see, it's about giving every single physical object a unique identity. This unique digital identity is embedded into, in this picture, a two-dimensional matrix code, which is not a QR code, looks similar, or an RFID chip, which can be machine readable. Unique IDs are usually randomized, non-sequential code that cannot also be forged. And of course, just to create that number, put it in there, doesn't help much. You have to securely manage them throughout their life cycle, from the beginning, as you see below, manufacturing, until the patient uses it. And that's why a decentralized and tamper-proof architecture called blockchain comes into the picture. In this context, it could be also called supply chain ledger, as ledgers are also a different name for the blockchain. It is a decentralized, trusted identity framework. And rather than relying on one centralized authority, which is usually, we see lots of databases, for example, for recalls, being managed by one company, it is really decentralized and can be used, interacted with full confidence with all the stakeholders. The other beauty of it is an immutable audit trail. Every single package which comes into the picture, it is added to this identity is added to this blockchain. It cannot be deleted anymore. It cannot be changed. So where is the data actually? The data is actually, in this blockchain, we are keeping actually pointers to the data. So there will be different databases. We as Gerresheimer keep our data for all these objects that we measure, their height, their weight, everything we do with them in our database. Pharmaceutical company for filling will keep their data on their own, and there will be lots of databases also for different part of the process. But this blockchain with this architecture will link basically all of them. So the application in the market can actually see if they're looking for a correlation analytics, they can gather the data from the different databases if they're authorized to. But if you're looking only in the manufacturing, you just get the pointer linked to the filling database, and you could do your analysis as fast as possible. So it brings basically this architecture, the best of two worlds. So blockchain is used for verifying the identity, but every company responsible with the governance of their data and making sure that that data is actually correct and managed locally. Imagine like it's a digital passport or like a electronic ID. So blockchain basically keep your ID in there, but your tax authority data, your insurance data, your medical records data in different databases, and someone can actually verify that. Once it's verified, you could access the data that you need through different databases. So now let's move on to a bit of physical world. How this unique identification actually can be done on the physical object and wired and have not been like this in the past. Were the challenges? Yes, of course. You're stepping into regulated production environment, and that's a bit different than the rest of my background in IT, where everything is really soft, and here we're getting into very hard stuff. So these unique IDs are actually, as mentioned, embedded into these 2D matrix codes, printed into a glass with digital ink printing technology, or we're even using laser technology for on polymer. And this, after they're printed, they have to go through lots of tests, which are then hard constrained in the pharma manufacturing, such as washing, sterilization with heats up to 300 degrees, sterilization through gas, and so on. But we managed to do that. It is doable now. It is according to the ISO standards, which also create a kind of error detection mode. So if there's even some issues with the code, they can be readable. And what we're doing also is that mentioning ecosystem afterwards, working with people, with companies, for example, automated visual inspection or readers to make sure that they're not interfered by this code or they can be read in any kind of position. The other methodology we are using, which came also into the picture, is the RFID, which I believe Nadine will elaborate on that in a different context. RFID has been there integrated in tires, in millions of tires for traceability, life science, in batteries, sometimes even textile, but not into these drug delivery systems. But as they're actually technological barrier has been removed and also price barriers, we see now possibility to integrate them into our products so that they can be read a bit easier, I would say, than the, let's say, the 2D matrix code, but they also allow mass reading. So you could basically read 160 syringes at once when they come into your production. You could use this data for aggregation into your packaging, into your pallets, into the whole transport all the way to point of care. Does it work with any production environment, or is there any one size fits all? Well, unfortunately, no. But I can state, again, experience in the last, let's say, 12 months that all modern systems, all new production line with the corresponding software and what I'm showing actually here can do that. So we have reached, or the CASP has been reached, the technology is mature enough and we could move towards that. That's about the physical side. And to conclude few stuff, we have created a demonstration tool. For example, here you could use this type of, let's say, just the samples with the 2D codes. And with that, I just want to show you how it works very simply. So we scan, basically, you can imagine you're a quality control person scanning one of your syringes from your samples you have received. You could see when they were made, what kind of batches, what kind of cosmetic checks has been done on them, what are the dimensions, exactly all you want to know for your compliance, for your accepting the incoming goods inspection. And if you have a, for example, problem, you could just scan or send us a ticket through the tool, through this application, and within minutes, instead of weeks, we could find out what went wrong during that part. Another application which is also downloadable, and you could use it also for your basically test and see how the whole blockchain technology works, is the application for point of care. As we know, there are more checks, especially for biologics, for cell therapy, for, again, very special medication where the doctor still or the nurse needs to check the validity, maybe the expiry date, the leaflet data, dilution data, general data at the moment that it's been administered, and at that moment there is no package actually on which there is data. So they will use the primary packaging, the first physical object for that, and you could use this tool yourself. There are even use cases where the doctor directly can scan that and then put it to the patient records. Again, you add additional database with more data, so you know exactly which syringe was administered to which patient. And if there are any problem in the market, any adverse effect, you could even go back all the way to find out where the problem was. Okay, successful data project in pharma manufacturing, especially those involve traceability and digital twin concepts. I could say technology is only one part of the puzzle. The real success factor goes far behind the systems themselves. Let's start the first one, business case. A clear business case, including all use cases, are crucial to show everybody what you're doing. Next one, I would say, is the cross-functional collaboration, which is very essential. and this beyond your own organization, and being engaged in ecosystems. And that's why we're here. This is the ecosystem we're building with machine vendors, with association, with providers of the technology. Everybody in the supply chain work together now in a network manner to bring this type of solution. The sequential way of working is gone. Data availability and consistency is also very important, that we keep track of it. We should do pilots or proof of concept. And when we do the proof of concept, as everybody says, 70% failed because they didn't think about scalability, think about how it could be scaled. But again, they're not contradictory. Proof of concept help you to make sure the use case you want to do is doable, but think about how you would scale it in the future so you could actually implement it. Last, you need a strong governance and change management. Again, sharing data is different than commodity products. You need new processes, new responsibilities, and a cultural shift. People, they don't want to share information, they don't want to share data. There's always been an issue. So with that, I would say if all these things is done, this technology can be used to have a successful product or end-to-end traceability and deploy the digital twin. And with that, I thank you very much for your attention and hand over to Stefan and Nadine.
Mute. So unmute. Okay. Ali, thank you very much for that compelling look at how Gerresheimer is, and yourself, of course, are dealing with the digital twins and the technology. I think you are on a quite good way to reshape the pharmaceutical supply chain. And it's also good to see that you could show us some practical applications and how you are supporting the healthcare and the supply chain environment. Thank you very much so far.
Thank you.
To the presentation. And by thanking Ali, I would like now to invite Nadine, Dr. Nadine Lampka, to the stage, to the virtual stage. And Nadine, please share your experience and give us some insight in your daily work.
Thank you very much, Stefan, for the introduction, and thank you also, Ali, for your great presentation. And I'm happy now to guide you through my presentation on connected and protected security selection criteria for pharma. But before we get started, I think it's very important to actually recall the reason behind our joint activities to make supply chains in pharma more secure. And I think many of you might know these numbers, but I think it's always good to recall them, that the overall value of the market is more than $200 billion of counterfeit medicines annually, and it shows an increase in 20% of annual growth, the counterfeit medicine markets. Also, it puts many millions lives at risk until 2050, even more, because counterfeit pharmaceuticals contribute to antimicrobial resistance, which I think is a very dangerous situation. And low to middle income countries are even more affected, but no geography on this planet is safe. And also the COVID pandemic has contributed to an increase in growth on black market sales by 400%. And unfortunately, this security concerns extend into the digital space. And this is especially crucial as there's a lack of awareness, of training of everyone going online and buying. And they sometimes don't know what risk they put themselves in. And so there's 50% medicines in the internet that are counterfeit according to the WHO. And the illegal pharmacy websites are increasing that are put online every day. So the risk is increasing also from this perspective. And this I just wanted to mention as an introduction to motivate why we are all jointly so active in this field. So there are many different security solutions and approaches available. And we heard already a nice approach from Ali and Gerresheimer. And there are many more solutions to be considered. But brand protection still, especially in pharma, is a very young discipline. And I'm doing now security consulting since more than 10 years. And I see a lot of different strategy approaches, and some strategies still fall short in their efficiency. And this is because I think there are criteria that need to be understood, and awareness about to actually choose the right solution to address the threat. And these 6 that I want to guide you through today are, I think, of major importance. It's threat scenarios, a target verification group, the packaging concept or label concept from our perspective, of course, the regulatory situation, but also the medicinal product. And then only as a last piece, I can really select a security solution approach to cover for efficient solution. So if we get started with the regulatory and normative requirements, they are mandatory, so they have to be considered, especially in the serialization. We have global regulation rising, but also more and more in tamper evidence. And that is very important, but it also needs to be understood that especially serialization can only be one part contributing to a security approach. Normally we have 2D barcodes, they are covert. Their main meaning is to transport information. So they are easily, unfortunately, to be copied and to put on a fake product. So there is its limitation. So we have to really consider more solutions than just what is being regulated. But of course, this needs to be considered as a basis for security measures and the packaging levels. The medicinal product already, the drug, the molecule you have in your pipeline is very crucial already and has a big impact on what security measures in the end might be effective. Why? Because the drug not only dictates the type of container it will be packed in, it may be a syringe, a pen, a vial. It also dictates the type of supply chain it's in, and as such the potential stakeholders of the supply chain that could form your target verification group, the persons that actually could participate and help you uncover illegal activity, that could be equipped with a detector or with a technology to verify your product. So the medicinal product really is of importance, also whether it is a one-time drug for a patient or if it's like a disease treating, a chronic disease treating a medication where you have a different channel in communication with the end user. So this is already very important. And apart from the security, of course, you need other functionalities in your packaging to protect the drug from UV light, maybe from gas ingress. So this is a holistic packaging approach that need to be considered and fit together with the security strategy. The label concept or the packaging concept in general is also important because that determines the processes it's made in, the printing technology. And of course, this is all important for the security technologies that you in the end want to implement. Sometimes it is not feasible. It is not feasible in the label concept you have because there are not printing stations, not enough available. If you integrate it into an existing product or in a new label, that all has an impact on the final decision and feasibility on a security approach. So this is also important and in direct relation to the drug product that you want to actually protect. One very important aspect is the target verification group. And that is directly related to your supply chain. So who are your stakeholders? Who are these persons that actually could verify your product? That is very important to understand. As well, it is very important to understand where you see the most threat. Where in the supply chain do you have already illegal activity? Where do you expect it? That might also depend on where, in which geography you have your products in. And then you can have a targeted approach in finding security solutions that are suitable for those type of target verification groups, so that you can actually minimize the risk in those parts of the supply chain. It may be diversion or theft. Or in the end of the supply chain in hospital, it might be insider threat and diversion in the hospital. You might need different technologies to address this threat. So in our consulting approach with the technologies that we can offer together with a huge partner network, we focus on the brand owner itself, a technology that only he owns and knows about it. The supply chain in a wider range, customs, which is a bit special because they have tools available which other supply chain stakeholders might not have. The healthcare professional, you have a different communication channel to this type of group. And then in the end, the patient or the often anonymous user group, and how to involve those into their verification, knowingly or even unknowingly. So from a technology approach, there are the different categories of technologies. They might be overt technologies like holograms, to mention a standard one, where you don't need a special tool. You can verify it by eye. And then you have other categories like NFC or other digital technologies that you can verify by smartphone. And then semi-covert or covert technologies that need a type of tool, either off the shelf, very easy, available, like a magnifying glass or UV lamp for the semi-covert product portfolio, or in the covert range, more special detector technologies. And also the choice of technology depends then which training effort you need, or which communication strategy, because very often I experienced that a technology was implemented, but it was not trained. Actually, people were not involved. They didn't know what to check, or they were not enabled to do so because they didn't have the verification tools. And then I think it is waste of money to implement a feature when no one is checking for it. So the training effort also comes along, which is different from technology to technology. And then also the verification group, which I mentioned already, the access to a technology, enable them with a detection or with an app or whatever is needed, is also different for those types of categories. So different verification tools, and we need to talk about that early on in the decision-taking process, what makes sense to address the respective threat scenario. And here we come to the threat scenario. I mean, it's not just counterfeit products. We see more and more the reuse of genuine products. They have to decode on. They still have a very nice, maybe, and a very secure anti-counterfeiting technology, but it's a reuse. It was used already. It was refilled with whatever content mimicking the original drug, and it's resold. And that is a very dangerous situation. Then we do have gray market and diversion. We have theft or illicit repackaging. And all of those threat scenarios are different, and they might be also different in different geographies. So it is very important to have a strategy and to understand that there are different measures to address those threat scenarios. And you see this triangle, a holistic security triangle. It's the temporal evidence portion for product integrity, the anti-counterfeiting technologies for the proof of genuineness, and it's the product identifier. And to be honest, you would need them all to have a very secure approach on a product basis. But of course, depending on the threat scenario, you might have a different focus on what you implement. For counterfeiting, of course, you need a strong anti-counterfeiting technology approach. But for reuse, you need a measure to see that the product has been used. You need a strong first opening indication. And as Ali mentioned, also RFID, there are possibilities to integrate also first opening in a digital, meaning with RFID or NFC, for example. So you need different technologies to address different threat scenarios. And only, I was talking now quite a bit about different criteria, only if you have a good understanding on what you have and which situation you have in your supply chain for a specific product in a specific geography, then we can do a pre-selection of security solutions. And then we talk tamper evidence on different packaging level, on primary container, secondary or shipper case level, the different authentication solutions, and what product identifiers you have implemented. Do you have it on the primary container, on a syringe already? And can you aggregate this information further up to the secondary packaging? So we really need to have a need profile understood to then jointly decide on what other security measures to take. And why is that so important? We talked about the digital threat rising. We know there are very many excellent digital data sharing secured frameworks available, PharmaLedger, blockchain, but very important is that you need a trusted entry point to the digital content. Basically, it's then rubbish in, rubbish out if you do not have a secure product that you enter the digital world with. So this is what I want to raise awareness about. It's very important that you have a secured product, and once you use the digital data then and you process that along the supply chain, that you know for sure you have it started from a trusted entry from a secured physical product. So digital trust begins with a physical product integrity. And only if you connect the two, the physical world, real world item, and you have a secured approach to the data, then you can securely share the data further on because you know you're coming from an original product. I think that is really important. And if we want to have a look at what measures you could take in the tamper evidence space, for example, we see that more and more first opening indication is demanded on a primary container level. So also, as I mentioned, first opening indication by means of RFID. As more and more the blister, for example, is being neglected for sustainability reasons and packaging density reasons, but then you need to transfer this functionality to the primary container level. And also, of course, in secondary packaging with tamper evidence seals, this is mandatory, or one type of anti-tampering device in Europe is mandatory since the FMD, the Falsified Medicines Directive, but we see very many seals that are not doing that job. They are purely transparent seals with no security measure, and they are waste of money because you can easily mimic them with a cheap transparent film, so then they are no effective measures. So rather take it serious and create a seal, equip it with a proper tamper evidence and security technologies that allow you to use it as a security measure. In our security guide, and as I mentioned, we have to, based on a need profile, do the pre-selection. So we jointly define your requirements, and only then we would come up with a specific security technology approach. And we have to reflect the target verification group, as discussed already. But also very important is the different technologies come with a different security level. And this is connected with a different set of parameters again. So, for example, the security level assessment we did depends on how much expertise or effort is needed to actually compromise the technology. How many provider or manufacturer of a specific feature are available in the market? How known is the feature? Do criminals know about it? Like a standard luminescence feature is not very high in security anymore. You have access, you can buy it maybe even on Alibaba or Amazon. You can print it very easily. Yes, it's a covert or semi-covert feature, and there is some effort to implement it, but still it's not a very secure feature. So there are also different criteria that make a security level of a technology. And it could indeed make sense to have a low security feature in your product implemented. Why? Because you want to understand the professionalism of the counterfeiters, to understand how dangerous are they? Do they mimic or do they counterfeit this type of feature already? Then you better adapt your strategy. Or are they even not counterfeiting this type of feature? Then you're safe and you can keep this product protected as is for a little while. So it also helps you understanding where the counterfeiters are in the respective market. But also always have a backup and know you have a feature which comes along with a higher security level. So here, for example, you see the portfolio in the semi-covert range, and you see that many technologies that are still standard in industry come with a rather low security level, which is okay as long as you combine it with like a higher security feature. The last minutes I would like to spend also on the digital aspects, because in the digital authentication space, the technologies that are verifiable by means of a smartphone is how we define that digital authentication are on the rise. But it is a quite complicated world we are in, as there are quite a lot of different technology approaches in this area. And this is what I want to share on this slide. So these are all technology categories. We made up these categories to better understand and cluster the approaches taken by different providers. And they come with limitations and benefits, each of them. So the matrix code plus column, for example, is representing all technologies that have a 2D code. And they make the 2D code more secure by adding another layer of security. It may be a combination with a hologram or the fingerprints during printing. So there are different possibilities in that space. The fingerprinting technologies are those like physical and clonable features, where the technologies are able to capture a unique fingerprinting of the product and can allow for a verification by means of a smartphone. Artwork-based technologies use modifications in your artwork to reliably verify it by the smartphone. Marker technology are different markers that can be captured by the smartphone. Covert codes are different technologies available where you print a code which is not detectable by the human eye, but by the smartphone, and can carry some information as like a 2D code, but just covert. And NFC, of course, is a near-field communication technology that also can be read out by means of a smartphone. So these categories are available in the market, and they all have their beauty, but also their limitations. And what I think is important to understand is we have different packaging levels which need to be protected, because every stakeholder in the supply chain gets in touch with different packaging levels. like very early in the supply chain, they don't get to see the primary container and the label. They rather get the shipper case or the carton box. So you need to have measures being implemented on all those stages. And coming to the categories of digital technologies I just shared, the complexity to integrate them on a primary container, which gets small, like take a syringe with a small diameter printed on a maybe foil-based label, you have a higher complexity, also due to higher maybe printing technology quality compared to the carton box, where you deal with a lot of space and also like printing on a fiber. So the number of solutions taking out of these categories that are available and that work in the convenient way that pharma industry is requiring and needing for making a technology an effective solution countering illegal activities, getting less. So there are not so many solutions available that actually can do the job on a primary container, but there are enough available. But we can help you identifying the one that would work if you're interested. And it's important to understand that complexity is increasing from left to right. One last food for thought. I think we see that industry is also moving towards integrating more stakeholders in the supply chain in this process, verifying a product, even unknowingly. And by that, you can transfer information and you also create trust. But also what you do from left to right, coming from brand owner only technologies to technologies that potentially the end consumer or user could use, you increase the amount of investigators, you increase the data points you get and the supply chain intelligence, and you boost early detection of illegal operations. And as such, you allow for uncovering illegal activity early on and hopefully protect patients from harm early enough, because it allows you enough time to react. Smart, secure, and connected. Yes, those new digital authentication technologies in pharma have many different use cases in the security space and added value space. So I think we are in a very interesting time now, moving from analog to digital. But at the same time, I think analog technologies still have the justification and do a great job if the mix is the right one. So I hope I could give you some ideas on which criteria to reflect on before you decide for a new security solution combination. And with that, I thank you for your attention. I'm looking forward to your questions.
Okay, Nadine, I assume I'm not muted. So first of all, Nadine, thank you very much for your presentation. I really appreciated that. One of the reasons, of course, is as a former CEO of PharmaLedger, not PharmaLedger, former CEO of PharmaLedger is good. Former CEO of Spectral Engines, sorry. I think we developed some of the security features together. It's always good, I think, to combine, let's say, future technologies as blockchain and digital twins with physical packaging security. And I also think that physical packaging security will have some revival in the upcoming months or years to go. It's not everything is digital, but I think it needs to be a good combination of both. And as you mentioned, if you put bad data in, you get bad data out. So I think it's imperative that these two things, digital and physical, are working together. So thank you once again. Thank you very much. And that leads us now to the Q&A. And I'm not going to share a screen again. I'm just trying to do something which I've never done before. Push hopefully the right button. Patrick, you are on the call with PharmaLedger again. And as we know you, we know that you are a very active participant whenever you show up in a PharmaLedger meeting. So did you this time as well? So let's try to find some answers to your question. And I think I put the answer now live. I'm not quite sure if you can see it. Sorry, my camera collapsed again. It seems to be a habit of the meeting here. Let's rejoin. I'm not quite sure if all of you can read the question from Patrick, actually. If not, there's a Q&A box, but I think it's a question for Ali, which is saying, how is the data along the supply chain actually added? It's one question. For example, the right e-leaflet. Can you give details? Additionally, what are the complete costs to have this implemented across the complete supply chain, and who would be expected to pay for this? So Ali, if you could answer some of the questions, I think you see them in the Q&A box.
Thanks, Stefan. Yeah, I mean, Patrick, as I mentioned before, there will be different databases for different data purposes or use cases. So one is the manufacturing use case, and for the leaflet, it will be the same. So it will be a database, in my opinion, managed by the brand owner or the franchise head for that special medication that lets you or allows you to put the leaflet in the database, for example, in all kind of languages. How does it then interact with this blockchain I was mentioning before? Again, once you basically your company is actually producing the medication and the first basically digital twin is being created with the identity, there's a link, for example, pointer to the manufacturing data. Once you fill them with your medication, could be, again, let's say it's a cancer therapy medication, you add to this blockchain another pointer and says, okay, if you're interested in a leaflet for this specific syringe in which we have the cancer therapy medication, the database to grab or get the data for a leaflet is there. So basically the whole framework enables that to be done easily. On the cost, I mean, so the cost basically for the leaflet part, leaflet use case shall be borne basically by the, let's say, brand owner. The cost, in my opinion, it depends on the whole structure, the kind of databases that you have, but the rest of it, the blockchain framework, the costs are quite low because it's been used for many different use cases. But happy to support you later on also in more details.
And probably what I can only suggest, Patrick and Ali, if the two of you probably can align on a one by one in the upcoming days to elaborate that subject a little bit further. I'm happy to share, let's say, contact details if the two of you like, and to make that arrangement if you not already know the contact details of Patrick or Ali. I'm happy here to assist. And then there's another question from Patrick to Nadine. So what are your thoughts on the use of QR codes for DPP? This is being pushed by many stakeholders due to the low cost, but it doesn't open up all sorts of opportunities for counterfeiters.
Yes, well, I mean, we saw it with the serialization efforts within the FMD, so it is quite a mission, or it was a mission to implement this. So I understand industry that it wants to actually not introduce always new technologies if there's infrastructure already available, which makes sense. So yes, QR code, of course, could be a way to be used for the product passport, but then it should not come on its own. It should be connected, it should be secured. And I only scratched the surface today, but there are, of course, technologies that could work together with a QR code, or could be aggregated, or other digital authentication technologies to secure the QR code, while allowing maybe the industry to move forward with the technology they already have implemented also on their lines, because it needs to be also a feasible solution for industry. But a QR code alone, carrying such sensitive data, also when it comes to second life, if I pass on a product for second use, I think that gets really tricky. So it needs to be a secure environment to put together. I hope that answers your question.
Nadine, thank you very much for that. And then I've got, let's say, one of the slides, Ali, I seen from you was actually stimulating some thoughts. What we want to do here is share back practice and what are the pain points and what works well and what doesn't work. And also to share that experience. Sometimes it's a little bit harmful, but I think it's worth a while. So, and in one of your slides, you said, well, and this was the challenging in the implementation process in Gerresheimer. And one of the topics came up is saying change management. But change management is a very broad topic. So what in this whole change environment did really work well, and what would you recommend to the rest of the community? And what are, from your personal perspective, no-goes where you just say, don't go that route. We haven't succeeded, and probably nobody will succeed on that kind of route. So just share this kind of experience and probably the pain you suffered.
I think from what we have done at Gerresheimer, but also my experience from the past, is that for such projects where new things where you cannot actually show the benefits directly because they have not been implemented in 1,000 places, the only way to do it is to spread the knowledge upfront, to explain what you're doing and what you believe it could bring. Meanwhile, again, proof of concept, doing pilots is the only way basically to bring the reality back to the, let's say, production. And again, as long as you're also production or manufacturing environment, what is important is, again, to be there much more in advance. So you cannot basically create these products. That's for me a no-go, and say, okay, we develop these things, we want to put this code, bring it into the manufacturing, tomorrow we want it. That's a no-go. Basically, again, showing the benefits long in advance, involve the people in the process, in the manufacturing. Could be also regulators, could be this for point of care doctors. Involve them, what will come, get feedback, and meanwhile, develop.
And just a follow-up question now that was triggered by one of your statements, especially when I heard the word regulators. So Nadine, Ali, I think the whole industry is a little bit in distress right now. Everybody is looking for the next solution to enhance, on the one hand, patient safety, but on the other hand, also to reduce some costs.
Yes.
But if you communicate everything and wait until the regulator has decided something, that can be quite a lengthy process. So from your experience or advice, how can we shorten the implementation process? What kind of setup do we need to do that?
Well, I think consortia such as PharmaLedger or RX60, where you can benchmark, where you can share experience, definitely speed up, or strategic partnerships among suppliers in the supply chain to pharma, and the exchange with pharma directly, I think, speeds up because you can share experience. This for sure. And when it comes to cost, that's what I meant with that you really have to consider what product goes in, like what is the medicinal product you want to protect. Because when you plan it from scratch, you decide the container and the label concept, you can maybe save money, as I said, by neglecting the blister, using a syringe that can be labeled up to the top, and you can transfer those functionalities, and you have a higher security, but you can save the blister packaging and process. So there are means if you start early in the development and start maybe even in clinical, when you decide for how you pack your product, what could be a suitable container also for the future. Start involving your partners, your development partners, to find a strategy that allows for cost saving and a secure product concept or packaging concept early on.
Okay, Nadine, Ali?
In my opinion, I think what I just mentioned before applies also on the regulators. I mean, we have heard a lot about, for example, applying artificial intelligence, machine learnings, leveraging data, and we see that regulators, for example, in FDA, there are actually some activities ongoing, but it always lags behind because that's not actually has been their job or subject matter expertise. So it's our job, basically, when we see new approaches, new technologies that can be used, to also inform them, get them involved, and to see basically what they want, which is, for example, better compliance, or let's say traceability for a biologic. It's something they want, but they don't tell us which technology to use. And as the data has never been actually used for bringing traceability in these approaches that we are looking at, they have to be also, again, more involved and more informed from the beginning, and not at the end of the thing, because they can actually help a lot. I mean, we have these things in life science or even automotive industry. And for example, leveraging data for traceability, digital twins is a must. But why not in pharma? Because again, regulator didn't see that approach. They don't know that it works. So again, let's inform them, involve them, and do I would say, maybe the lobbying, whether it's a correct word or not, but it should be done by everybody in the ecosystem.
I agree.
Okay, and there is another question upcoming from Stefan. Please share your view on the probability that any of the proposed solutions will be supported by regulators. Impression is that unless broadly supported and regulated, they remain individual solutions with limited impact. Yeah, got a point.
Maybe from my side, again, looking at the manufacturing part of it, let's say mix up, or making sure that the regulator says what you put in this kind of, let's say, syringe, it has to be the one that you actually intend to, that you have to make sure, and they want the compliance for that. Taking that into account, I would say if there is a solution which can show that it could do it better than the current methodologies today, we will convince the regulator. But it's not, I don't see the regulator job to find out which technology to use in order to improve the compliance. So waiting for the regulator to come with that solution is not the right way to go. So no probability that they come with that, but they have their.
So from a PharmaLedger point of view, what I've noticed that, let's say, when I make a black and white statement, and I know that's not 100% objective, we've got, let's say, pharma companies, when it comes, for example, to electronic leaflets, who are ahead of the game, ahead of the regulators, and working on solutions, even so it's not compulsory in every country in the world yet. And there are other pharma companies who are just waiting until the regulator makes a decision, and imposing more or less an electronic leaflet or a hybrid model at least. And let's say both strategies have got their advantages. On the one hand, you are a follower and trying to lower costs. On the other hand, on the other side, you are investing into a new technology and you can drive that technology then to the best benefit of your corporation and to the whole environment. I think that's one thing. And then you're not all of a sudden surprised when countries like Turkey all of a sudden say, well, in 1st of January 2026, you need to implement at least a hybrid model for e-leaflet. And then all of a sudden, all regulatory departments and purchasing departments are chasing for the right solution, which is putting stress on every organization. So I think if you are involved right from the beginning, that is also, let's say, driving the right path through the organization, taking stress out of an organization, and at the final end, costs, because you don't need to make ad hoc decisions, which in general are more expensive than if you just can plan for it. But Nadine, I interrupted you when you wanted to reply, sorry.
No, I mean, it depends on what we are focusing here. We see that regulation is being done for serialization, a bit for temporary evidence on a global scale, depending on which geography you look at. But even the temporary evidence piece was not really defined by the regulation. That's why the ISO came into play and created a standard that the European Commission referred to. So I think there is also some hesitation to really push one solution. They want to give the industry also the freedom to make their decision. What works best, and for authentication solution, for both temporary evidence and authentication solution, I could imagine that it will always be like that there is no regulation what to implement. Maybe there will be a regulation that there has to be a security element and not just serialization or temporary evidence or both. So, and I think it is also difficult. But as more technology evolves, especially in the digital space, I can imagine that if cameras get better, if they get cheaper, if there is a digital authentication technology at some point that can be used and implemented in such a way that it could be really a solution for the whole industry. But I guess we are not there yet. But it needs to be feasible for everyone if you mandate to do so.
And because of that, Nadine, I think it is extremely important that we share ideas, that we share knowledge. Yes, every company has got its own path to follow. But this is why we need to bring in people here to share best practice, to sometimes just to step out of the comfort zone and to see what others are doing. And I think that should be the value of PharmaLedger and the webinar we are providing. And by doing so, I would like to close now the Q&A session and try to wrap up a little bit. I would like to thank all the participants for attending this first webinar, which started now a series of webinars, a little bit of call to action. If you have a topic you think that might be interesting for the community here, or you have a speaker that we should listen to, then please bring that up to my teams and myself attention, so that we can engage that and also try to schedule that. We started that webinar here today with Ali Badei from Gerresheimer, who presented a compelling look on digital twin technology with a combination of blockchain and data sharing. It's a clear example of how digital infrastructure can help the industry reduce risk, increase efficiency, and prepare for growing regulatory demands. But in having said that, Ali, I fully agree. We constantly need to communicate and convince regulatory bodies that there are new involving technologies, and we need to explain that constantly, and let's call it lobby it. And then we heard from Dr. Nadine Lampka of Schreiner, MediPharm, about physical packaging security and why that is still important. And I think the importance is going to grow in the upcoming months to come. So digital trust only works when it's grounded in physical product integrity. I think that is the major summary of Nadine's presentation today. So together, the two contributes to a physical or an alignment of physical security features with digital technologies and build more secure and intelligent pharmaceutical ecosystem, which PharmaLedger stands for, because in general, we try to do with the custodian of technology and data for all our member and the whole industry. Having said that, I would like to thank you, Nadine and Ali, for your presentation, for the time you invested upfront in speaking to us. It was great. Thank you once again to all participants. And we will send out a recording of that meeting or webinar, probably not today, but until the end of the week. So if you want to have a recap or share that information with some of your colleagues, feel free to do. By having said that, depending on where you are in Brazil, it's still good morning. Mexico, I think, as well. And for the rest of us in Europe, I wish you a good evening and thank you very much for the time and for joining this call.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right.